The doors of the great hall slammed shut behind Mia Calloway, and every head in the room turned toward her at once. She had never seen so many powerful people gathered in one place. Alphas from every territory sat in tall chairs arranged around a massive stone floor, their eyes sharp, their faces unreadable. Mia's heart pounded so hard she thought everyone could hear it. She was late, she was out of breath, and she had no idea where she was supposed to sit. She had traveled for 6 hours to reach the Grand Summit, carrying a message from her pack leader, old and tired Alpha Callum, who could no longer travel far. Mia was only 22, an Omega with no rank, no title, and no experience in rooms like this. She had been told to find a seat near the back, deliver her message when called, and leave quietly. But the moment she stepped inside, panic took over. Rows of unfamiliar faces blurred together, and the only empty chair she could see clearly was one at the very front of the hall, raised slightly higher than the rest, carved from dark wood with a crest of a wolf circling a crown. She did not know what that crest meant. She did not know that chair had not been sat in by anyone other than one man for the last 10 years. Mia walked forward, aware of hundreds of eyes following her, and lowered herself into the seat, relieved to finally be off her feet. She folded her hands in her lap and tried to look calm, though her fingers trembled slightly. A woman 2 rows away gasped. A man beside her went pale and looked away quickly, as if watching would make things worse. Whispers rippled across the hall like wind through dry grass. Mia frowned, confused. Had she done something wrong? She glanced around, searching for a sign, a clue, anything that would explain the sudden tension pressing down on the room. Then the doors at the far end of the hall opened. A tall man walked in, dressed in black, his steps slow and deliberate. He did not rush. He did not need to. Every single Alpha in the hall rose to their feet the instant he appeared, bowing their heads in respect. Mia felt the shift in the air before she understood why. This man carried himself like something ancient and unstoppable, like a storm that had learned patience. This was Draven Ashworth, the Alpha King, ruler over every territory in the land, feared by kings and commoners alike. Mia had heard stories about him her whole life, though she had never truly believed the stories could be about a real person. They said he had not lost a single battle in 15 years. They said his gaze alone could bring a grown Alpha to his knees. They said he had no mercy, no mate, and no patience for foolishness. And Mia was sitting in his chair. She realized it half a second before he did, and her stomach dropped so fast she nearly forgot how to breathe. She tried to stand, but her legs would not move fast enough. Draven's gaze landed on her, and the entire hall fell into complete silence. Not a single breath, not a single whisper. Even the torches on the walls seemed to hold still. Mia opened her mouth to apologize, to explain, to do anything that might stop the disaster she felt building around her, but no sound came out. She simply sat there, frozen, staring up at the most powerful man in the world, waiting for the moment everything would fall apart. Draven Ashworth did not raise his voice. He did not summon guards. He did not even change his expression in the way everyone expected. He simply walked closer, step by step, his dark eyes fixed on her, studying her the way someone studies a puzzle they were not expecting to find. "You are sitting in my seat," he said, his voice calm and quiet, yet somehow it carried to every corner of the hall. Mia scrambled to her feet immediately, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "I am so sorry," she said quickly. "I did not know. I was told to find any open seat, and I saw this one, and I—" "Sit back down," Draven said. The words landed like a stone dropped into still water. A ripple of confusion spread through the room. Alphas exchanged glances, some leaning toward each other to whisper, others simply staring in disbelief. Mia blinked at him, certain she had misheard. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sit back down," Draven repeated, his tone unreadable. "You already made yourself comfortable. No need to stop now." Mia did not know what to do. Every instinct told her to run, to apologize again, to beg for forgiveness before punishment came crashing down. But something in his eyes told her that running would only make things worse. Slowly, carefully, she lowered herself back into the seat, her hands gripping the armrests so tightly her knuckles turned white. Draven turned to the rest of the hall, addressing the gathered Alphas as if nothing unusual had happened at all. "Bring another chair," he said simply. "I will sit beside her today." The silence that followed was thicker than before. Mia watched, stunned, as a guard rushed forward with a second chair, setting it down right next to hers. Draven sat, adjusting his sleeves calmly, as though this arrangement were the most natural thing in the world. Mia felt every eye in the hall burning into her, judging her, questioning her, trying to understand what she could not understand herself. Why hadn't he punished her? Why hadn't he thrown her out, or worse, made an example of her in front of everyone? Alphas had been banished from territories for smaller mistakes than this. Yet here she sat, beside the most feared man in the world, and he seemed almost amused by the entire situation. The summit continued, though Mia barely absorbed a single word spoken. Reports were given about border disputes, resource shortages, and shifting alliances between smaller packs. She kept her eyes forward, her spine straight, terrified of drawing any more attention to herself. But she could feel Draven's occasional glance sliding toward her, quick and searching, as if he were trying to solve something in his mind. When the summit finally ended, and the Alphas began filing out of the hall, whispers followed Mia like a shadow. She heard fragments of conversation as she hurried toward the exit. "Did you see that? He let her stay. He actually let her stay. Who is she? I have never seen her before. An Omega, sitting in the Alpha King's seat. And he did nothing." Mia's face burned with humiliation, though a small, confused part of her wondered why humiliation was the only thing she felt. She had expected fear. She had expected anger. Instead, she felt strangely seen, as if something about the moment had mattered beyond the mistake itself. She reached the outer courtyard, taking deep breaths of the cool evening air, grateful to be away from all those staring eyes. She had barely taken 10 steps toward the road leading out of the fortress when a voice stopped her. "You are leaving without giving your message." Mia turned to find Draven standing a short distance away, his hands clasped behind his back, watching her with the same unreadable expression from before. She swallowed hard, suddenly remembering the entire reason she had come. "I forgot," she admitted quietly. "I am sorry. My Alpha Callum sent me to deliver a report about the border raids near our territory. I was supposed to speak during the summit, but after what happened, You panicked," Draven finished for her. Mia nodded, too embarrassed to argue. Draven studied her for a long moment, tilting his head slightly, as if seeing something in her that others might miss. "Your name," he said. "I did not catch it." "Mia," she said. "Mia Calloway." Something flickered across his face at the sound of her last name, so brief that Mia almost missed it. It was gone before she could be certain she had seen anything at all. "Calloway," Draven repeated slowly, as if testing the weight of the word. "That is an unusual name for an Omega from a small pack." Mia frowned, unsure what he meant. "It is my family name. My mother carried it before me." "Your mother?" Draven said, his voice quieter now. "Is she still living?" The question caught Mia off guard, and a familiar ache settled in her chest, one she had carried since childhood. "She passed away when I was young," Mia said. "I do not remember much about her." Draven did not respond right away. He simply looked at her, his expression unreadable once more, though something behind his eyes seemed to be working through a memory or a puzzle she could not see. Finally, he spoke again. "Deliver your message tomorrow morning," he said. "Come to the fortress at sunrise. I will make sure you are heard properly this time." Mia blinked, surprised. "You are not going to punish me for the seat? Should I?" Draven asked, one eyebrow lifting slightly. "I do not know," Mia admitted honestly. "Everyone seemed to think you would." A faint, almost invisible curve touched the corner of his mouth, gone as quickly as it appeared. "Everyone thinks a great many things," he said. "Come tomorrow, Mia Calloway. Do not be late again." He turned and walked back toward the fortress without waiting for her response, his long coat trailing behind him, leaving Mia standing alone in the courtyard, utterly confused and strangely breathless. She stood there for several minutes after he disappeared inside, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. She had expected punishment. She had expected shame. Instead, she had been given a second chance, an invitation, and a question about her mother that she could not stop thinking about. Why had he asked about her mother? Why had the mention of her family name changed something in his expression, however briefly? Mia had grown up with almost no information about her mother's past. Her father rarely spoke of her, and the little she did know felt more like fragments of a story than a full picture. As she walked back toward the small inn where she had rented a room for the night, Mia noticed people watching her from doorways and windows, murmuring to each other as she passed. Word of what happened in the great hall had clearly traveled fast. She kept her head down, trying to ignore the attention, though her mind kept circling back to the strange calm in Draven's eyes when he had looked at her. She had heard so many terrifying stories about the Alpha King, ruthless, unforgiving, a man who ruled through fear rather than kindness. Yet the man she had met tonight had not matched any of those stories. He had been calm, curious, almost gentle in his own controlled way, though something told Mia that gentleness was not a word most people would use to describe him. That night, lying awake in the small inn room, Mia stared at the ceiling, replaying the events of the evening over and over. She thought about the shocked faces of the other alphas, the way the entire hall had held its breath, waiting for punishment that never came. She thought about the way Draven had said her family name, slowly, like it meant something important. Whatever mistake she had made by sitting in that seat, it seemed to have opened a door to something much larger than she understood. And though fear still lingered in the back of her mind, a new feeling had joined it. Curiosity. Sharp and impossible to ignore. Tomorrow, she would return to the fortress. Tomorrow, she would face the Alpha King again, this time by invitation rather than accident. And somehow, she knew that whatever happened next would change everything she thought she understood about her life, her family, and the man everyone feared but she was beginning to see differently. Outside her window, the moon rose high above the fortress in the distance, its pale light casting long shadows across the sleeping town. Mia closed her eyes, her mind racing with questions she could not yet answer, unaware that far across the town, in a private chamber inside that same fortress, Draven Ashworth stood by his window too, staring out at the same moon, thinking about a name he had not heard spoken aloud in many, many years. Neither of them slept easily that night, and neither of them yet understood how deeply their fates had already begun to twist together. Morning came faster than Mia expected. She rose before sunrise, dressed carefully in her plainest clothes, and made her way toward the fortress gates, her heart hammering with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. Guards at the entrance eyed her carefully before stepping aside, clearly having been told to expect her. She walked through the towering gates, feeling smaller than ever beneath the massive stone walls surrounding her. A servant led her through quiet corridors, past paintings of past Alpha rulers and old battle banners hanging from the ceiling, until they reached a smaller room than the Great Hall, one meant for private meetings rather than grand assemblies. Draven was already there, standing near a window, his hands clasped behind his back exactly as they had been the night before. He turned when she entered, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. "You came," he said finally. "You told me not to be late," Mia replied, trying to keep her voice steady. A faint smile touched his lips, though it vanished quickly, replaced by his usual composed expression. "Tell me about the border raids," he said. "Everything Alpha Callum wished for me to know." Mia took a steadying breath and began speaking, describing the increasing attacks along her pack's territory, the missing livestock, the destroyed fences, the fear spreading among her people. Draven listened closely, asking sharp, precise questions, his focus entirely on her words. For the first time since arriving at the summit, Mia felt like she was being truly heard. When she finished, Draven was quiet for a long moment, considering everything she had said. "Your pack is vulnerable," he said finally. "Smaller territories often are, especially those without strong alliances." "We manage," Mia said, though even she could hear the uncertainty in her own voice. "Managing is not the same as thriving," Draven said. He studied her again, that same searching look from the night before returning to his eyes. "Tell me more about your mother, Mia Calloway. What do you know of her life before you were born?" Mia hesitated, surprised by the sudden shift in conversation. "Very little," she admitted. "My father never spoke of her much. I know she came from a different territory before settling with our pack. I know she died when I was very young. That is nearly everything I know." Draven's expression grew distant, as if he were looking at something far beyond the walls of the room. "Your mother's name," he said quietly. "What was it?" "Grace," Mia answered. "Grace Calloway." Something shifted in Draven's face immediately, something deeper and more complicated than the flicker from the night before. He turned away from her briefly, staring out the window at the courtyard below, his jaw tightening. "Grace," he repeated softly, almost to himself. "Did you know her?" Mia asked, unable to hide the eagerness in her voice. She had waited her entire life for someone, anyone, who might be able to tell her more about the mother she barely remembered. Draven turned back to face her, his expression carefully guarded once more. "That," he said slowly, "is a conversation for another day. For now, know this. Your pack will not be forgotten. I will send additional protection to your territory within the week." Mia blinked, startled by the sudden generosity. "Why would you do that? We have nothing to offer you in return." "Perhaps," Draven said, his eyes lingering on her face in a way that made her chest tighten strangely. "You already have." Before Mia could ask what he meant, he turned and walked toward the door, pausing only briefly to glance back at her one final time. "Rest today," he said. "Tomorrow, you will begin learning things about your family you never expected to know." He left the room without another word, leaving Mia standing alone once more, her mind spinning with questions, her heart pounding with a strange mixture of hope and fear. Whatever connection existed between her mother and the Alpha King, she was certain now that it was far deeper than simple coincidence, and she was determined to uncover the truth, no matter where it led her. News traveled fast within the fortress walls, faster than Mia could have imagined. By the time she stepped outside into the courtyard that morning, servants were already whispering behind their hands, guards were exchanging quiet glances, and even the birds seemed to pause in their singing to listen for what might happen next. An Omega girl from an unknown pack had spent the night inside the Alpha King's private wing, and no one, not even his closest advisors, understood why. Mia tried to ignore the stares as she made her way toward the front gates, intending to return to the inn and gather her things before heading home. She had promises to keep to Alpha Callum, reports to deliver, and a pack depending on her safe return. But before she reached the gate, a young man in fine formal clothing stepped into her path, blocking her way with practiced politeness. "Miss Calloway," he said, bowing slightly. "The Alpha King requests your presence once more." Mia frowned, glancing toward the fortress towers rising behind him. "I already spoke with him this morning," she said. "I was told I could leave." "Circumstances have changed," the young man replied smoothly. "My name is Owen. I serve as one of the Alpha King's closest advisors. He asks that you join him for the midday council meeting." Mia's stomach twisted with unease. A private conversation was one thing. A council meeting, surrounded by powerful alphas who already viewed her with suspicion, was something else entirely. "Why would he want me at a council meeting?" she asked carefully. Owen's expression remained polite, though something guarded flickered behind his eyes. "That is not for me to explain," he said. "Please, follow me." Reluctantly, Mia followed him back through the fortress, past corridors she had not yet seen, until they reached a grand chamber filled with long tables and tall chairs arranged in a circle. Several alphas were already seated, speaking quietly among themselves, their conversations halting the moment Mia entered the room. Among them sat a man Mia did not recognize, broad-shouldered and sharp-eyed, watching her with open curiosity that bordered on something colder. Owen leaned toward her slightly and murmured under his breath. "That is Alpha Corian Blackwell," he said quietly, "ruler of the Northern Territories. Be careful around him." Mia nodded, though she did not fully understand the warning yet. She took the seat Owen gestured toward, near the edge of the room, and waited nervously as the meeting began. Draven entered moments later, and the entire room fell silent instantly, exactly as it had the night before. He took his seat at the head of the table, his gaze briefly meeting Mia's before moving on to address the gathered alphas. "We have matters to discuss regarding territory boundaries," Draven said, his voice calm and commanding. "But first, I wish to address the events from last night's summit." Mia's chest tightened immediately. She had hoped the matter would simply be forgotten, but clearly, the Alpha King intended otherwise. "Many of you witnessed an unusual incident," Draven continued, his eyes sweeping across the room. "A seat was taken without knowledge of its significance. I want to be clear that no punishment will follow this mistake. Miss Calloway acted without ill intent, and I see no reason to make an example of honest confusion." Murmurs rippled through the room, though none dared speak openly against him. Mia felt her face flush with embarrassment at being discussed so directly, though she was grateful for his defense. Alpha Corian, however, did not remain silent. He leaned forward slightly, his expression carefully composed, though his tone carried a subtle edge. "With respect, Alpha King," he said, "traditions exist for a reason. Allowing such a mistake to pass without consequence may send the wrong message to smaller packs, who might test other boundaries in the future. Are you suggesting I punish an innocent mistake to satisfy tradition?" Draven asked, his voice deceptively calm. Corian's smile did not reach his eyes. "I am simply suggesting that appearances matter, Alpha King, especially for a ruler as respected as yourself." The tension between the two men was palpable, though neither raised their voice nor broke composure. Mia sat frozen, uncertain whether she was the cause of a genuine political disagreement or something far more complicated. "I appreciate your concern for appearances," Draven said finally, his tone leaving no room for further argument. "However, my decisions regarding my own hall remain mine to make. This matter is closed." Corian inclined his head slightly, though the look he shot toward Mia afterward sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with the temperature in the room. She sensed, without fully understanding why, that she had just made an enemy, without ever intending to. The council meeting continued for another hour, discussing matters far beyond Mia's understanding: border arrangements, resource-sharing agreements, and shifting alliances between neighboring territories. She remained quiet throughout, absorbing everything she could, though her mind kept drifting back to the cold calculation she had seen in Corian's eyes. When the meeting finally ended, Draven asked her to remain behind as the other alphas filed out of the room. Once the last of them had gone, he turned to her, his expression softer than it had been during the meeting. "I apologize for putting you through that," he said. "I did not expect Corian to raise the matter so directly." "Why does he dislike me?" Mia asked. "I have never met him before in my life." Draven's jaw tightened slightly. "Corian dislikes anything he cannot control or predict," he said. "Your presence here, and my reaction to it, falls outside both categories." "Your reaction," Mia repeated slowly. "Everyone keeps mentioning that. What exactly was so unusual about it?" Draven studied her for a long moment before answering. "I have ruled for 10 years, he said finally. "In that time, I have never allowed anyone, friend or enemy, to challenge protocol without consequence. Yet last night, I found myself unable to be upset with you, despite every reason to be." Mia felt heat rise in her cheeks, though she was unsure whether it came from embarrassment or something else entirely. "Perhaps you are simply more reasonable than the stories suggest," she offered. A faint smile touched his lips. "Perhaps," he said. "Or perhaps there is something about you, Mia Calloway, that I do not yet fully understand myself." The words hung between them, heavier than either of them seemed prepared for. Mia looked away first, unsettled by the intensity in his gaze, though a small, curious part of her wondered what exactly he meant. Over the following days, Mia found herself unable to leave the fortress as quickly as she had planned. Draven insisted on personally overseeing the additional protection being sent to her pack's territory, and each day brought new reasons for her to remain nearby, reviewing supply routes, discussing border patrol schedules, and answering questions about her home that seemed to stretch far beyond simple diplomatic necessity. She began to notice small things about him that the stories never mentioned. He listened carefully when others spoke, rarely interrupting. He treated servants with quiet respect, thanking them for small tasks most rulers would consider beneath their notice. He carried himself with tremendous authority. Yet Mia never once saw him raise his voice in frustration, even when things did not go his way. One afternoon, as she walked through the fortress gardens trying to clear her thoughts, she found Draven standing near a stone fountain, seemingly lost in thought. He did not notice her approach at first, and for a brief moment, Mia saw something rare cross his features. A heaviness, a quiet weariness hidden beneath his usual composed exterior.
"You look troubled,"
she said softly, announcing her presence. He turned, quickly composing himself, though not quickly enough to hide what she had seen. "Ruling is rarely simple," he said. "Every decision carries weight beyond what people often realize." "Is this about Corian?" Mia asked. Draven's expression darkened slightly. "Corian is patient," he said. "He waits for weakness before acting. I intend to give him none." "And am I a weakness?" Mia asked quietly, unsure why the question mattered so much to her. Draven turned to face her fully, his dark eyes studying her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "No," he said firmly. "You are something else entirely, something I am still trying to understand." Before Mia could respond, Owen appeared at the garden entrance, his expression urgent. "Alpha King," he said quickly. "There has been trouble along the northern border. Alpha Corian's territory reports a disturbance, and blame is already being pointed toward your protection forces." Draven's expression hardened instantly, all traces of vulnerability disappearing behind a wall of controlled authority. "Gather the council," he said. "I will address this immediately." He turned to Mia one final time before following Owen from the garden. "Stay close to the fortress," he said. "Until this matter is resolved, I want you where I know you are safe." Mia nodded, though unease settled deep in her stomach as she watched him disappear back into the fortress. Whatever conflict was brewing between Draven and Corian, she now understood with growing certainty that she had somehow become tangled within it, whether she wanted to be or not. That evening, alone in the guest chamber she had been given within the fortress, Mia sat by the window, staring out at the darkening sky, her mind spinning with unanswered questions. Why had Draven reacted so differently to her presence than anyone expected? What connection existed between her mother and the Ashworth family that made even the mention of Grace Calloway's name shift something behind his eyes? And why did Alpha Corian seem so determined to see her as a threat worth removing before she had even understood the danger surrounding her? She thought about returning home, about walking away from the growing complications tangled around the fortress and its powerful ruler. Yet something deep inside her, stronger than fear, kept her rooted in place. Answers waited here, buried beneath years of silence and unspoken history, and for the first time in her life, Mia found herself unwilling to walk away before uncovering the truth. Outside her window, storm clouds gathered on the horizon, distant thunder rumbling like a warning. Mia closed the curtain slowly, her heart heavy with uncertainty. Unaware that far across the fortress, in a private council chamber, Draven Ashworth stood before his advisors, delivering orders that would set in motion events neither he nor Mia could yet fully predict. The unexpected reaction that had shocked an entire hall of alphas was only the beginning. Somewhere beyond the fortress walls, old rivalries were stirring awake, and a storm far greater than the one gathering in the sky was beginning to take shape. The council chamber filled quickly the next morning, tension thick enough to feel like a weight pressing down on every shoulder in the room. Reports had come in overnight confirming that a group of unidentified attackers had struck a supply outpost along Corian's northern border, leaving damaged buildings and frightened villagers behind. No lives had been lost, but the timing could not have been worse, arriving just as Draven had announced additional protection for Mia's home territory. Mia sat quietly near the back of the chamber, watching as alphas argued back and forth, some demanding immediate retaliation, others urging caution, until the true source of the attack could be confirmed. Draven remained composed throughout, listening carefully before finally raising a hand to silence the room. "We do not act on assumptions," he said firmly. "Send scouts to investigate the outpost. I want facts, not fear, guiding our next decision." Corian, seated across the chamber, folded his arms with visible frustration. "While we wait for your scouts to gather facts, my people remain vulnerable," he said. "Perhaps if resources were not being redirected towards smaller, less significant territories, my border would have received the protection it needed." The insult was subtle, but Mia felt it land squarely on her, the reminder that Corian viewed her pack's protection as a wasted resource. Several alphas glanced her way, and she forced herself to sit straighter, refusing to shrink beneath their scrutiny. "Every territory under my protection matters equally," Draven said, his voice carrying a quiet authority that silenced further argument. "Size does not determine worth." Corian said nothing more, though the look he gave Mia before the meeting ended left no doubt that he considered her presence, and Draven's growing attention toward her, to be a personal insult against his own standing. After the council dispersed, Mia found herself walking the fortress corridors alone, her thoughts heavy with everything she had witnessed. She was beginning to understand that her simple mistake in the Great Hall had triggered something far larger than she ever intended, stirring old rivalries and testing loyalties in ways she could not fully grasp. She wandered without direction until she found herself standing before a long hallway lined with portraits, faces of past alpha rulers staring down at her with solemn expressions. One portrait, larger than the rest, depicted a stern-looking man with the same sharp eyes as Draven. "That is my father," a voice said behind her. Mia turned to find Draven standing a short distance away, his gaze fixed on the portrait as well. "Nathan Ashworth," he continued. "He ruled before me, for nearly 30 years. He looks intimidating," Mia said carefully. "He was," Draven replied. "Strong, unyielding, respected by allies and feared by enemies." He paused, his expression growing distant. He was also deeply private about certain parts of his life. Mia sensed an opening and took it carefully. "Did he know my mother?" she asked. Draven's jaw tightened, and for a long moment Mia thought he might avoid the question entirely, just as he had before. Instead, he sighed quietly and gestured toward a nearby bench. "Sit with me," he said. "It is time you learned the truth." Mia's heart pounded as she lowered herself onto the bench beside him, bracing herself for whatever revelation awaited. "Before my father became Alpha King," Draven began, "he was betrothed to a young woman from a neighboring territory. Their union was meant to strengthen alliances between two struggling packs during a difficult period." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "That young woman's name was Grace." Mia's breath caught in her throat. "My mother," she whispered. Draven nodded slowly. "The arrangement ended before the marriage could take place," he continued. "The details were never made fully clear to me, even as I grew older. My father refused to speak of it, and any records regarding the matter seem to have been removed from the fortress archives entirely." "Removed?" Mia asked, confusion mixing with a growing unease. "Why would anyone erase records about a simple broken engagement?" "That is precisely what troubles me," Draven admitted. "Broken engagements are common enough among ruling families. They rarely warrant such careful erasure unless something more significant occurred." Mia sat in stunned silence, trying to piece together fragments of a history she had never known existed. Her mother, engaged to the father of the Alpha King, before somehow ending up married to a lesser alpha in a struggling pack far from the fortress. The timeline felt impossible, yet the pieces fit together with unsettling precision. "Do you think something happened to her?" Mia asked quietly. "Something that forced her to leave?" Draven's expression grew troubled. "I do not know," he admitted, but your reaction to sitting in that chair, and my own reaction to your presence, feels far too significant to be simple coincidence." Before Mia could respond, footsteps echoed down the corridor, and Owen appeared, his expression carefully neutral, though something in his posture suggested urgency. "Alpha King," he said, "the scouts have returned from the northern outpost. Their findings are unusual." Draven rose immediately, his focus shifting back to matters of leadership. "Unusual how?" "The attackers left no trace of their pack markings," Owen explained. "No scent, no symbols, nothing to identify their origin. It appears deliberately hidden." Draven's expression darkened. "Someone wanted this attack to remain unclaimed," he said quietly, "which means someone wanted blame to fall elsewhere." Mia watched the exchange with growing unease, sensing that the attack and the mystery surrounding her mother were beginning to feel less like separate matters and more like threads of the same tangled web. She thought of Corian's cold gaze during the council meeting, his obvious resentment toward her presence, and wondered if his ambitions extended far beyond simple political maneuvering. "Do you believe Corian is responsible?" Mia asked once Owen had left to gather further information. Draven considered the question carefully. "Corian has wanted greater influence for years," he said. "An unclaimed attack that creates suspicion and unrest among allied territories would benefit him greatly, especially if it weakens trust in my leadership." "But you have no proof," Mia said. "Not yet," Draven agreed, "which is precisely why he remains dangerous. Corian is patient enough to wait for the perfect moment to strike, whether through subterfuge or open challenge." Mia felt a chill settle over her despite the warmth of the corridor. She had arrived at the fortress as nothing more than a messenger, carrying reports about border troubles in her small home territory. Now, she found herself tangled in political intrigue, ancient family secrets, and a rivalry that seemed to be growing more dangerous by the day. "What happens now?" she asked. Draven turned to face her fully, his expression softening slightly despite the tension surrounding them. "Now, we uncover the truth," he said, "about the attack, about your mother, about everything that has been hidden for far too long." "Together?" Mia asked, unable to hide the uncertainty in her voice. A faint smile touched his lips, though his eyes remained serious. "Together," he confirmed. Over the following days, Draven arranged for Mia to have access to the fortress archives, hoping that somewhere among the countless records and documents, clues about her mother's past might still remain, overlooked or forgotten rather than deliberately destroyed. Mia spent hours combing through dusty scrolls and yellowed papers, searching for any mention of Grace Calloway or the broken engagement Draven had described. Progress was slow, frustratingly so, though Mia refused to give up. Each evening, she reported her findings, or lack thereof, to Draven, who listened attentively despite the growing pressures of leadership weighing on him. Reports continued arriving about tensions along the northern border, and though no further attacks occurred, an unsettling quiet had settled over the region, the kind that often precedes greater trouble. One evening, as Mia sorted through a particularly old collection of documents, she found a small, faded letter tucked between the pages of an unrelated record. The handwriting was elegant, clearly written by a woman, and the signature at the bottom made her breath catch in her throat. Grace. Her hands trembled as she carefully unfolded the fragile paper, aware that whatever words remained written across its surface might hold answers she had waited her entire life to find. The letter was addressed to someone named Nathan, and though portions of the text had faded beyond legibility, enough remained for Mia to understand that her mother had once loved deeply, had once hoped for a future within these very fortress walls, before circumstances forced her to leave everything behind. Mia read the letter 3 times before finally rising from her seat, her mind racing, her heart pounding with a mixture of grief and determination. She needed to find Draven immediately. Whatever truth remained hidden about her mother's past, she was certain now that this letter held the first real clue toward understanding it. As she hurried through the fortress corridors, letter clutched tightly in her hand, she failed to notice a shadowed figure watching her from a nearby doorway, someone who had been observing her research in the archives far more closely than she realized, someone whose loyalty lay far from where Mia assumed it did. The truth Mia sought was closer than ever, but so too was the danger surrounding it, danger that had already begun quietly working its way into the very heart of the fortress she now called safety. Mia found Draven in his private study, bent over a table covered with maps and reports, his brow furrowed in concentration. He looked up the moment she entered, and something in her expression must have alerted him immediately, because he rose from his chair without waiting for her to speak. "What did you find?" he asked. Mia held out the letter with trembling hands. "It is from my mother," she said. Written to your father. I think she truly loved him. Draven took the letter carefully, his eyes scanning the faded words with an intensity that made Mia hold her breath. Several long moments passed before he finally lowered the paper, his expression heavy with unreadable emotion. She writes of a future she believed was certain, he said quietly. A wedding date. Plans for the territories to unite under shared leadership. He paused, shaking his head slowly. Something happened to change all of that, and whatever it was significant enough to erase nearly every trace of it from these archives. Do you think your father chose to end things himself? Mia asked. Draven considered the question carefully. My father was many things, he said, but he was not cruel without reason. If he ended this engagement, something must have forced his hand. Something powerful enough to convince him that marrying your mother was no longer possible. Mia sank into a nearby chair, exhaustion and confusion weighing heavily on her shoulders. None of this explains why he reacted the way he did when I mentioned her name, she said, or why you reacted the same way when I told you. Draven's gaze softened as he studied her. Perhaps it is simply this, he said. Perhaps something about you carries traces of her, in ways neither of us fully understand yet. The words settled between them, quiet and heavy with unspoken meaning. Mia looked away first, unsettled by the warmth building in her chest, despite everything uncertain surrounding them. I want to help you find the rest of the truth, Draven said finally, not simply because of my father, or because of some old promise buried in these walls. I want to help because your safety, and your pack's safety, matters to me now, regardless of what we uncover. Mia met his gaze, searching for any sign of insincerity, finding none. In exchange for what? She asked carefully, still cautious despite everything. Nothing, Draven said simply. I ask for nothing in return. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard, and for the first time since arriving at the fortress, Mia allowed herself to fully trust the man sitting before her, despite every warning she had heard about the Alpha King before meeting him in person. Over the following days, their partnership deepened, though not without complications. Draven arranged for additional guards to accompany Mia whenever she left the fortress walls, insisting that her safety remained a priority, given the growing tensions surrounding Corian's territory. Mia, in turn, continued searching through the archives, uncovering small fragments of information that slowly painted a clearer picture of her mother's past. She learned that Grace Calloway had once been considered one of the most promising young leaders among the smaller territories, admired for her wisdom and compassion despite her youth. She learned that the engagement between Grace and Nathan Ashworth had been celebrated widely among allied packs, seen as a hopeful symbol of unity during a difficult era of frequent conflicts. Yet something had shattered that hope entirely, and no matter how deeply Mia searched, the true cause remained frustratingly elusive. One afternoon, while reviewing older correspondence between Nathan Ashworth and various regional leaders, Mia noticed a familiar name mentioned briefly within one faded document. She paused, reading the passage twice to be certain she had not misunderstood. The name belonged to Corian's family line. Her pulse quickened as she carefully read through the surrounding text, piecing together fragments of information suggesting that Corian's father had once been deeply involved in negotiations surrounding the broken engagement, though the exact nature of his involvement remained frustratingly vague. She rushed to find Draven immediately, breathless with the discovery. He listened carefully as she explained what she had found, his expression growing increasingly troubled. My father and Corian's father were rivals long before either of us were born, Draven said slowly, processing the implications. If Corian's family played a role in ending the engagement between my father and your mother, it would explain a great deal about the animosity between our families. Do you think Corian knows about this? Mia asked. I do not know, Draven admitted. But if he does, it may explain far more than simple political ambition behind his recent behavior. Their investigation had uncovered new questions far faster than answers, though the growing picture suggested something darker than either of them had initially suspected, a hidden history tangled with rivalry, betrayal, and secrets carefully buried to protect reputations long thought unquestionable. That evening, as Mia walked back toward her chamber after another long day searching through records, she noticed Owen standing near the archive entrance, his expression unusually tense. Miss Calloway, he said, bowing slightly. May I speak with you privately? Mia paused, sensing something unusual in his demeanor. Of course, she said carefully. Owen glanced around the empty corridor before lowering his voice. I have served the Ashworth family faithfully for many years, he said, and I must warn you, gently, to be cautious with how deeply you involve yourself in matters long buried within these walls. Are you suggesting I stop searching for the truth about my own mother? Mia asked, unable to hide the edge in her voice. I am suggesting caution, Owen replied carefully. Some truths, once uncovered, cannot be buried again, and some people within these walls may not wish for certain truths to resurface at all. Mia studied him carefully, uncertain how to interpret his warning. Are you speaking as a friend, or as someone protecting the Ashworth family's reputation? She asked. Owen hesitated before answering. Perhaps both, he admitted quietly. Please, be careful, Miss Calloway. Not everyone within these walls shares the Alpha King's growing trust in you. He turned and walked away before Mia could ask further questions, leaving her standing alone in the dim corridor, unease settling heavily in her chest. She had assumed her greatest danger lay outside the fortress, within Corian's territory or among his allies. Owen's warning suggested something far closer, far more immediate, and far more difficult to identify. She returned to her chamber that night, locking the door carefully behind her, though she knew a simple lock would offer little protection if the danger Owen warned her about existed within the fortress's own ranks. She thought of Draven's growing trust in her, his willingness to help uncover secrets that clearly still carried painful weight for his family, and wondered whether that trust made her a target for those who preferred the past remain buried. Sleep came slowly that night, filled with fragmented dreams of her mother's face, blurred and distant, calling out words Mia could never quite understand. She woke before dawn, her mind clearer despite the restless night, more determined than ever to uncover whatever truth remained hidden, regardless of the danger surrounding it. Whatever alliance had formed between herself and the Alpha King, she understood now that it came with risks neither of them had fully anticipated. Yet as she dressed for another day of searching, preparing herself for whatever challenges awaited, Mia found herself unwilling to turn back, driven forward by a determination stronger than any fear Owen's warning had planted within her. The truth was close now, closer than it had ever been in her entire life, and she intended to reach it no matter what obstacles stood in her way. Word of Mia's growing presence within the fortress spread quickly among neighboring territories, carried through the constant flow of messengers, traders, and visiting alphas who passed through the great gates each week. What began as simple curiosity soon transformed into something far more significant. Whispered rumors that suggested the Alpha King had finally chosen a mate, an Omega from a small, unremarkable pack, who had somehow captured his attention in ways no one else ever had. Mia first noticed the shift in how people treated her during a routine visit to the fortress kitchens, where she had gone to request a simple meal after another long day in the archives. The kitchen staff, usually polite but distant, suddenly treated her with an eagerness bordering on reverence, offering extra portions and asking careful questions about her comfort within the fortress walls. Word travels fast, Owen explained later that evening, finding her in the corridor outside her chamber. The staff has noticed how much time the Alpha King spends with you, combined with his refusal to punish the seating incident and his decision to personally oversee protection for your pack. Conclusions were bound to form. But nothing has happened between us, Mia said quickly, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. We are simply investigating a shared family history. Owen's expression remained carefully neutral, though something in his eyes suggested he was not entirely convinced by her explanation. Perceptions matter greatly among ruling families, he said. Whether true or not, these rumors will affect how other territories view your presence here, and how they view the Alpha King's judgment moving forward. Mia absorbed this information with growing unease, understanding for the first time the full weight of the situation she had unknowingly stepped into. She sought out Draven later that evening, finding him in his study reviewing reports from the northern border, and relayed everything Owen had told her. Draven listened carefully, his expression unreadable. The rumors are not entirely without foundation, he said finally, setting aside his papers. Mia blinked, caught off guard by his directness. What do you mean? Draven rose from his chair, walking toward the window overlooking the fortress courtyard below. I have ruled for 10 years without ever considering taking a mate, he said quietly. Many advisors have pressured me to secure an alliance through marriage, believing it would strengthen my position among the territories. I refused every suggestion, unable to find genuine connection with any candidate presented to me. He turned to face her, his dark eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Then you appeared, sitting in a seat that belongs to no one but myself, unafraid, despite the danger surrounding your mistake. And something shifted within me that I have struggled to fully understand ever since. Mia's heart pounded rapidly, uncertain how to respond to such an admission. I never intended to complicate your life this way, she said softly. You have not complicated anything, Draven replied. If anything, you have clarified feelings I did not know existed until you walked into that hall. The weight of his words settled heavily between them, neither quite ready to fully address what they meant for the future. Mia looked away first, overwhelmed by the intensity of emotions she had not expected to encounter during what was supposed to be a simple diplomatic errand. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "That depends on what you want," Draven said carefully. "I will not force expectations upon you, regardless of what rumors suggest or what my advisors believe would benefit our territories." Mia appreciated his honesty, though uncertainty still lingered heavily within her. She thought of her small pack back home, dependent on stability and safety that seemed increasingly tied to her relationship with the most powerful alpha in the region. She thought of Corian's growing resentment, and how any deepening connection between herself and Draven would likely intensify his hostility rather than diminish it. "I need time," she admitted honestly, "to understand my own feelings, separate from everything happening around us." Draven nodded, respect clear in his expression despite the vulnerability visible beneath his composed exterior. "Take whatever time you need," he said. "I have waited 10 years to feel this way about anyone. I can wait longer still, if necessary." Over the following days, the rumors surrounding their relationship only intensified, despite neither confirming nor denying anything publicly. Visiting alphas began treating Mia with unusual deference, some offering gifts, others attempting to secure her favor through flattery, clearly hoping to build alliances through her potential position within the Ashworth family. Corian's behavior, however, grew increasingly hostile with each passing day. During a brief visit to the fortress regarding ongoing border discussions, he cornered Mia in a quiet hallway, his expression carrying a coldness that sent chills through her. "You believe yourself clever," he said quietly, his voice carrying none of the polished courtesy he displayed during council meetings. An Omega from nowhere, suddenly positioned to become Luna, over territories far greater than anything your pack has ever known. "I never sought this position," Mia replied firmly, refusing to let his intimidation show through her voice. "Sought or not, you have it," Corian said, "and I intend to ensure the Alpha King recognizes the danger of allowing sentiment to guide decisions meant for strategic advantage." "Is that a threat?" Mia asked, her heart pounding despite her outward composure. Corian's smile carried no warmth whatsoever. "Consider it a warning," he said. "The Ashworth family has made mistakes before regarding matters of the heart. I would hate to see history repeat itself so soon." He walked away before Mia could respond, leaving her standing alone in the corridor, his words echoing ominously through her mind. The Ashworth family has made mistakes before. Did he know something about the broken engagement between Draven's father and her mother? Was his hostility rooted in more than simple political ambition? She reported the encounter to Draven immediately, watching his expression darken with each word she spoke. "Corian grows bolder," he said, anger simmering beneath his controlled tone. "Threatening you directly suggests he feels increasingly desperate to prevent whatever connection is forming between us. Or he knows something we do not," Mia said. "About my mother. About what truly happened all those years ago." Draven's jaw tightened, and he nodded slowly. "I will send additional inquiries regarding his family's history," he said. "If Corian's father played a role in ending my father's engagement, there may be records within his own territory that could confirm our suspicions." "That sounds dangerous," Mia said, worry creeping into her voice. "Everything about this situation has become dangerous," Draven replied grimly. "Which is precisely why I refuse to allow you to face it without protection." He arranged for additional guards to remain near Mia at all times, a decision that only fueled further rumors regarding their relationship, though neither of them could deny that genuine danger now surrounded every step of their investigation. Mia found herself growing accustomed to the constant presence of guards, though the reminder of Corian's threat never fully left her mind. One evening, as she sat alone in the fortress gardens trying to process everything happening around her, Draven joined her quietly, settling onto the bench beside her without speaking at first. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold. "I never imagined my life taking this direction," Mia finally admitted. "A few weeks ago, I was simply an Omega delivering messages for my pack leader. Now I find myself tangled in ancient family secrets, political rivalries, and rumors about becoming Luna over territories I barely understand." Draven turned to look at her, something gentle softening his usual composed expression. "Life rarely follows the paths we expect," he said. "Sometimes the most significant changes arrive through the smallest, most unexpected moments, like a mistaken seat in a crowded hall." Mia found herself smiling despite everything weighing on her mind. "You are handling all of this remarkably calmly," she observed. "I have learned that panic rarely solves anything," Draven replied. "Besides, despite the danger surrounding us, I find myself unwilling to regret how any of this began. His words carried a warmth that settled deep within Mia's chest, chasing away some of the unease that had built throughout the day. Yet even as she allowed herself a rare moment of peace, she remained acutely aware that somewhere beyond the fortress walls, Corian continued plotting his next move, and whatever truth remained buried about her mother's past grew closer to the surface with each passing day. The political balance among the territories had already begun shifting, and Mia understood, with growing certainty, that the storm building around them had only just begun. The inquiries Draven sent regarding Corian's family history took nearly a week to yield results, arriving through a trusted contact who had once served within Corian's own territory before relocating years earlier due to disagreements with the ruling family. The contact, an older woman named Clara, arrived at the fortress quietly, requesting a private audience with both Draven and Mia together. They met in Draven's study, away from prying eyes and listening ears, the tension in the room palpable as Clara settled into a chair across from them. "I served the Blackwell family for nearly 20 years, Clara began, her voice steady despite obvious nervousness. "I left after witnessing things I could no longer justify remaining silent about." "What things?" Draven asked carefully. Clara took a deep breath before continuing. "Nearly 25 years ago, your father, Nathan Ashworth, was engaged to a young woman named Grace, from a territory much smaller than his own. The engagement represented hope for many struggling packs, myself included, who believed unity between their families might finally bring stability to our region." Mia leaned forward, hanging on to every word. Corian's father, Alpha Desmond Blackwell, viewed this potential alliance as a direct threat to his own ambitions. Clara continued. He had long desired greater influence over the Northern Territories, and a strengthened alliance between the Ashworth and Calloway families would have significantly diminished his own political standing. "What did he do?" Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Clara's expression grew troubled. "He manufactured false evidence suggesting Grace had been unfaithful during her engagement to Nathan," she said. "Letters, testimonies from paid witnesses, all carefully constructed to convince Nathan that his betrothed had betrayed him." Mia felt her chest tighten painfully at the revelation. "My mother would never have done such a thing," she said firmly, though grief mixed with anger colored her voice. "I do not believe she did," Clara said gently. But Nathan, young and proud, believed the evidence presented to him. He ended the engagement immediately, humiliating Grace publicly before the entire Council of Alphas. Draven's expression had grown increasingly dark throughout Clara's account, his hands clenched tightly at his sides. "Why has none of this ever come to light before now?" he asked. "Desmond Blackwell ensured all evidence was carefully controlled," Clara explained. "Records were altered or destroyed, witnesses were paid to remain silent or relocated far from the territories where their testimony might resurface. Grace, humiliated and heartbroken, left the region entirely, eventually settling within a small pack far removed from the political conflicts that had destroyed her reputation and her future." Mia's eyes filled with tears as she absorbed the painful truth about her mother's past. "She never spoke of any of this," she said quietly. "I always believed my father was her first love, the only man she had ever cared for." "Perhaps she wished to protect you from the pain of her past," Clara suggested gently. "Or perhaps she simply could not bear reliving such humiliation, even in memory." Draven rose from his chair, pacing the length of his study, anger and grief warring visibly across his features. "My father spent the remainder of his life believing a lie," he said. "A lie that destroyed the happiness of two innocent people, all because Desmond Blackwell feared losing influence he had no right to claim in the first place." "Does Corian know the truth about his father's actions?" Mia asked. Clara hesitated before answering. "I cannot say with certainty," she admitted. "Desmond passed away several years ago, and whether he confided this history to his son before his passing remains unknown to me. However, given Corian's clear hostility toward Miss Calloway, I would not be surprised if some awareness of this history exists within him, even if incomplete." The room fell into heavy silence, as everyone present absorbed the weight of what had been revealed. Mia felt an overwhelming mixture of grief for her mother's suffering, anger toward the injustice that had shaped both her family's history and Draven's, and a strange, unexpected relief at finally understanding the truth that had remained hidden for so long. "Thank you," Draven said finally, addressing Clara with genuine gratitude. "You risked considerable danger coming here to share this information." "I could not remain silent any longer," Clara replied. "Grace deserved better than the lies that destroyed her happiness, and her daughter deserves to know the truth, regardless of how painful it may be." After Clara departed, escorted safely from the fortress under careful guard, Mia and Draven sat together in heavy silence, both processing the magnitude of what they had learned. Finally, Mia spoke, her voice thick with unshed tears. "My mother suffered because of a lie invented purely out of jealousy and ambition," she said. "She lost the life she was meant to have, the future she had planned, all because Desmond Blackwell could not accept losing influence to a stronger alliance." Draven moved to sit beside her, his presence steady and comforting despite the anger still simmering within him. "Your mother's suffering was never her fault," he said firmly. "Nor is any of this a burden you should carry alone. Your father believed a lie that destroyed an innocent woman's reputation," Mia said. "Doesn't that anger you?" "It angers me greatly," Draven admitted. "But it also clarifies something else entirely." He turned to face her fully, his dark eyes holding hers with quiet intensity. "Perhaps fate has given us the chance to correct a wrong that should never have happened in the first place. Perhaps the connection between us exists precisely because the universe intends to heal what was broken between our families so many years ago." Mia felt tears finally spill down her cheeks, though they carried relief alongside grief. "Do you truly believe that?" she asked softly. "I believe," Draven said gently, "that nothing about the moment you sat in my seat was truly a mistake at all." They sat together as the evening deepened around them, processing grief and hope in equal measure, understanding now that their growing connection carried far greater significance than either of them had initially realized. Yet even as comfort settled between them, Mia could not shake the lingering unease regarding Corian, and whether he, too, carried knowledge of his father's cruel deception. If he did know the truth, and had chosen to hide it, rather than seek justice for the innocent people his father had harmed, then his hostility toward Mia carried a darker weight than simple political rivalry. It suggested a willingness to protect his family's reputation regardless of the cost to others, a trait that made him significantly more dangerous than either Mia or Draven had previously understood. The truth about Grace Calloway had finally emerged after decades of careful concealment, but Mia understood, with growing certainty, that uncovering this painful history had done little to resolve the danger surrounding her. If anything, it had only deepened the stakes of the conflict building steadily between Draven and Corian, a conflict that Mia now realized she had become inextricably tangled within, whether she wished to be or not. Somewhere within the Northern Territories, Corian continued his careful plotting, unaware, or perhaps entirely aware, that the truth his father had worked so hard to bury had finally begun resurfacing after all these years. Nearly a week passed following Clara's revelations, and though the fortress remained outwardly calm, an undercurrent of tension continued building beneath the surface. Draven had begun quietly gathering additional evidence regarding Desmond Blackwell's deception, hoping to eventually expose the truth publicly and clear Grace Calloway's name once and for all. Mia, meanwhile, found herself growing closer to Draven with each passing day, their shared investigation transforming into something deeper than either of them had initially anticipated. Yet not everyone within the fortress welcomed this growing closeness. Sophie, one of Draven's longtime advisors who had served the Ashworth family for nearly 15 years, had grown increasingly uneasy watching Mia's rising influence within the fortress. She had witnessed countless potential matches presented to Draven over the years, each one carefully vetted for political advantage, only to be dismissed without consideration. Watching an Omega from an unknown pack capture the Alpha King's attention so completely unsettled her deeply, though she kept her concerns carefully hidden behind a mask of polite professionalism. Corian, aware of Sophie's growing unease through careful observation during his visits to the fortress, saw an opportunity too valuable to ignore. During a private meeting arranged under the pretense of discussing border trade agreements, he approached her directly. "You have served the Ashworth family faithfully for many years," Corian said, his tone carrying practiced warmth. "Surely you share my concern regarding the sudden influence this outsider has gained over the Alpha King's judgment." Sophie hesitated, uncertain how to respond to such a direct approach from a rival Alpha. "My concerns are my own," she said carefully. "Of course," Corian replied smoothly. "But consider this. An Omega from a small, insignificant pack, suddenly granted unprecedented access to Fortress archives, private council meetings, and the Alpha King's personal confidence. Does that not strike you as unusual, perhaps even suspicious?" "What are you suggesting?" Sophie asked, her curiosity clearly piqued despite her attempt at composure. "I am suggesting," Corian said carefully, "that Mia Calloway's sudden appearance, and her equally sudden influence over Draven, may not be entirely coincidental. Perhaps her presence serves purposes beyond simple family history." Sophie frowned, considering his words carefully. "You believe she is manipulating the Alpha King?" "I believe," Corian said, choosing his words with deliberate precision, that her true intentions deserve far greater scrutiny than they have received. Perhaps she seeks to weaken the Ashworth family from within, exploiting old wounds and family history to gain trust she has not truly earned. The seed of doubt Corian planted took root quickly within Sophie's mind, fueled by her own existing unease regarding Mia's rapid rise within the fortress. Over the following days, she began quietly sharing her suspicions with other members of the council, carefully framing her concerns as genuine worry for the Alpha King's judgment rather than baseless accusation. Whispers began circulating through the fortress once more, though this time carrying a far more dangerous tone than simple curiosity about romantic rumors. Servants exchanged uneasy glances when Mia passed, and several council members began treating her with noticeable coldness during meetings she attended alongside Draven. Mia noticed the shift almost immediately, though she struggled to understand its source until Owen approached her privately one evening, his expression troubled. "There are rumors circulating," he said carefully, "suggesting you may be working against the Ashworth family's interests. Some believe you seek to weaken Draven's position through manipulation rather than genuine connection." Mia felt her stomach drop with shock and hurt. "That is absurd," she said. "Everything I have done has been to uncover the truth about my own mother, nothing more." "I believe you," Owen said gently, "but belief alone may not be enough to counter rumors that have already taken root among several influential council members." "Who started these rumors?" Mia asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Owen hesitated before answering. "Sophie has been the primary voice raising these concerns," he admitted, though I suspect she did not arrive at these suspicions entirely on her own. Mia's mind immediately turned to Corian, certain that his hostility toward her had finally manifested into something far more dangerous than simple threats. She sought out Draven immediately, relaying everything Owen had shared with growing distress. Draven's expression darkened considerably as he listened. "Sophie has served my family faithfully for years," he said. "If she has been convinced to spread such rumors, someone has manipulated her trust quite skillfully." "Corian," Mia said firmly. "This has his influence written across every word." "Likely," Draven agreed, though proving that connection will require careful handling. Accusing Sophie directly without proof risks alienating a loyal advisor unnecessarily, while allowing these rumors to continue unchecked risks, damaging both your reputation and my judgment among the council. "What should we do?" Mia asked, frustration and worry evident in her voice. Draven considered the situation carefully. "I will speak with Sophie directly," he said. "Perhaps understanding the true source of these rumors will help her recognize she has been manipulated, rather than genuinely protecting the family's interests." The following morning, Draven called Sophie into his private study, requesting a candid conversation regarding the concerns she had been raising among the council. Sophie arrived nervous but resolute, clearly prepared to defend her position. "I have heard troubling rumors," Draven began carefully, "suggesting you believe Mia Calloway poses a threat to this family's interests. I would like to understand where these concerns originated." Sophie hesitated before answering. "I have simply observed her rapid rise in influence, and questioned whether it serves genuine purpose or hidden agenda," she said. "And did these questions arise entirely from your own observations?" Draven pressed gently. "Or did someone encourage this line of thinking?" Sophie's composure faltered slightly at the direct question. "Alpha Corian mentioned similar concerns during a recent conversation," she admitted reluctantly. "Though I assure you, my worries stem from genuine loyalty to this family, not manipulation." "I do not doubt your loyalty," Draven said gently, "but I must ask you to consider carefully whether Corian's concerns truly reflect genuine worry for this family's well-being, or whether they serve his own ambitions instead." Sophie's expression shifted slowly from defensive to uncertain as she processed his words. "You believe he manipulated me deliberately?" she asked. "I believe," Draven said carefully, "that Corian has long sought ways to undermine my judgment and weaken my standing among the council. Using your genuine loyalty against Mia serves his purposes perfectly, regardless of whether his concerns hold any true merit." Sophie remained silent for a long moment, clearly troubled by the implications of what Draven had suggested. Finally she spoke, her voice quieter than before. "I apologize if my concerns have caused unnecessary difficulty," she said. "I will make efforts to correct the rumors I may have inadvertently encouraged." Relief washed through Mia when Draven relayed this conversation to her later that evening, though unease still lingered regarding Corian's willingness to manipulate loyal advisors for his own purposes. If he was capable of turning trusted allies against her through carefully planted doubt, what other tactics might he employ as tensions continued escalating? "This will not be his final attempt," Draven said grimly, echoing Mia's own concerns. Corian has shown himself willing to use whatever tools available to weaken our position. We must remain vigilant and prepared for whatever he attempts next. Mia nodded, determination replacing some of the hurt she had felt upon learning about the rumors targeting her character. I refuse to let his manipulation define how others perceive me, she said firmly. Whatever truth we continue uncovering, and whatever future lies ahead for us, I will not allow fear or false accusations to weaken my resolve. Draven's expression softened with quiet admiration as he studied her. That resolve, he said, is precisely why I believe you are capable of facing whatever challenges still await us. Yet even as reassurance settled between them, both understood that Corian's manipulation of Sophie represented only the beginning of a far more dangerous campaign, one that threatened not only Mia's reputation, but the stability of the entire region, as old rivalries continued edging closer toward open conflict. Word arrived that a second Grand Summit had been called, gathering every alpha from the region once more, to address the growing tensions surrounding border disputes, the unresolved attack on Corian's outpost, and the unusual rumors that had spread regarding Mia's presence within the fortress. Draven had spent days preparing carefully for this gathering, understanding that whatever he chose to say publicly would carry significant consequences for both his leadership and Mia's safety moving forward. Mia felt her nerves building steadily as the day of the summit approached. She remembered vividly the humiliation and confusion of her first appearance in the Great Hall, and though circumstances had changed dramatically since that moment, the weight of facing so many powerful alphas again filled her with unease. You do not need to attend if you are not ready, Draven told her the evening before the summit, sensing her nervousness. I need to be there, Mia said firmly. Whatever happens, whatever you decide to announce, I want to face it directly rather than hiding from the consequences. Draven studied her with quiet admiration. Your courage continues to surprise me, he said. The morning of the summit arrived clear and bright, though the atmosphere within the fortress carried an undeniable tension as alphas from every territory began arriving, filling the great hall with murmured conversations and curious glances directed toward Mia as she took her seat, this time properly, near the front of the hall rather than in the Alpha King's chair itself. Corian arrived among the last of the gathered leaders, his expression carefully composed, though Mia caught the subtle satisfaction hidden behind his eyes, clearly believing whatever rumors Sophie had spread would weaken Draven's standing during this crucial gathering. Draven entered the hall precisely on time, the entire assembly rising immediately in respect as he took his place at the head of the room. He allowed a moment of silence before beginning, his voice carrying clearly across the packed hall. Many of you have heard rumors regarding recent events within my fortress, he began, addressing the gathered alphas directly. Rumors suggesting manipulation, hidden agendas, and questions regarding my judgment as your Alpha King. Murmurs rippled through the hall, though Draven continued without hesitation. I wish to address these concerns directly and clearly, he said. Nearly a month ago, an Omega named Mia Calloway entered this hall by mistake, taking a seat she had no knowledge belonged specifically to me. Rather than punishing an honest error, I chose understanding instead. He paused, his gaze finding Mia's briefly before continuing. In the weeks since that mistake, I have come to learn truths about my own family's history that have remained hidden for over 2 decades. Truths involving deliberate deception, orchestrated by Alpha Desmond Blackwell, against an innocent young woman named Grace Calloway. The hall fell into stunned silence, every eye turning toward Corian, whose expression had shifted rapidly from confident satisfaction to visible alarm. Grace Calloway, Draven continued, his voice carrying quiet authority, was once engaged to my own father, Nathan Ashworth, before false evidence, deliberately manufactured by Desmond Blackwell, destroyed both her reputation and the alliance their union would have created. Grace was Mia's mother. Gasps echoed through the hall as the implications settled over the gathered alphas. Corian rose from his seat abruptly, his composure finally cracking beneath the weight of public exposure. These are baseless accusations, he said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. I have evidence, Draven replied calmly, gesturing toward a folder Owen carried forward and placed upon the central table. Testimony from a witness who served your family faithfully for years before choosing to leave, rather than remain complicit in such deception. Records confirming the manufactured evidence used to destroy an innocent woman's reputation. Corian's face had grown pale, though he continued attempting to maintain his composure before the watching alphas. Whatever occurred between our fathers decades ago has no bearing on present matters, he said. It has significant bearing, Draven countered. Given that your recent behavior toward Mia Calloway suggests an awareness of this history, and a willingness to protect your family's reputation through manipulation rather than honesty. Spreading rumors through my own advisors, attempting to undermine trust in her character. These actions reveal far more about your intentions than any accusation I could level against you directly. The hall remained tensely silent, every alpha present absorbing the magnitude of what had just been revealed. Corian, recognizing that further denial would only damage his standing further, lowered himself slowly back into his seat, his expression carefully guarded once more, though the damage to his credibility had clearly already taken root among the assembled leaders. Draven allowed the silence to settle for a long moment before continuing, his gaze shifting toward Mia once more. "I wish to make one further announcement," he said, "regarding my own future and the direction of this territory." Mia's heart pounded rapidly, uncertain what he intended to say next. Mia Calloway has shown remarkable courage, wisdom, and integrity throughout circumstances that would have overwhelmed many others, Draven continued. She has faced humiliation, manipulation, and threats with unwavering strength, all while helping uncover truths that have remained buried for over 2 decades. He paused, his gaze holding hers steadily. "I formally declare Mia Calloway under my protection, and my intended future Luna, regardless of the rank she currently holds or the traditions that suggest otherwise." The hall erupted into a mixture of murmurs, some clearly supportive, others visibly uncertain about such a dramatic departure from established custom. Mia felt tears building in her eyes, overwhelmed by the public declaration and the weight of everything it represented. An older alpha near the front of the hall rose slowly, his expression thoughtful rather than hostile. "Alpha King," he said carefully. "Tradition dictates that a future Luna holds significant rank or lineage befitting such a position. Miss Calloway holds neither. Tradition also dictated," Draven replied evenly, "that manufactured lies should destroy an innocent woman's future without consequence for those responsible. I have no interest in preserving traditions that protect injustice rather than genuine merit and character." Murmurs of agreement began rippling through portions of the hall, though Corian's expression remained tight with barely controlled fury. Mia understood, watching the exchange unfold, that Draven's declaration carried far greater significance than simple romantic announcement. He was directly challenging outdated systems that had allowed corruption and manipulation to flourish unchecked for generations. The summit continued for several more hours, addressing lingering questions about the unresolved attack on Corian's outpost, though suspicion now clearly fell more heavily upon Corian himself given the revelations regarding his family's history and his recent manipulative behavior. By the time the gathering finally concluded, the political landscape among the territories had shifted dramatically, with several previously neutral alphas expressing clear support for Draven's leadership and his controversial choice regarding Mia. As the hall slowly emptied, Corian approached Draven one final time, his expression carrying a barely restrained fury that promised further conflict ahead. "You have humiliated me before every leader in this region," he said quietly, his voice low enough that only Draven and Mia could hear. "This will not be forgotten nor forgiven." "Neither will your father's deception," Draven replied calmly, "nor your own attempts to manipulate loyal advisors against an innocent woman. Whatever consequences follow from today's revelations, you brought them upon yourself through your own actions." Corian's jaw tightened, though he said nothing further, turning sharply and striding from the hall with several of his allied alphas following closely behind him. Mia watched him leave, unease settling deep within her despite the relief of finally having the truth about her mother acknowledged publicly. "He will not simply accept this defeat quietly," she said, once Corian had disappeared from view. "No," Draven agreed grimly. "I expect he will retaliate, likely sooner rather than later." Despite the looming threat of Corian's inevitable response, Mia felt a profound sense of relief and validation settling within her chest. Her mother's name had finally been cleared before the very leaders who once believed the lies constructed against her, and though danger still loomed ahead, she felt steadier than ever, standing beside a man who had chosen truth and integrity over convenient tradition, regardless of the consequences it might bring. Whatever storm Corian intended to unleash in retaliation, Mia understood now that she would not face it alone. 3 days after the summit concluded, urgent news arrived at the fortress, carried by an exhausted messenger who had ridden through the night without rest. Mia's home territory, the small pack led by aging Alpha Callum, had come under sudden assault, with unidentified forces attacking the outer boundaries under cover of darkness. Mia's blood ran cold as she listened to the messenger's breathless report. "How many attackers?" Draven demanded immediately, his expression hardening into fierce focus. "Difficult to say precisely," the messenger replied, still catching his breath. "Enough to overwhelm our limited defenses. Alpha Callum has called for immediate reinforcement." "This is Corian," Mia said, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. He is retaliating exactly as you predicted. Draven's jaw tightened with barely restrained fury. He seeks to punish you for the humiliation he suffered during the summit, he said, and to weaken my standing by proving I cannot adequately protect those under my declared care. We need to leave immediately, Mia said, already moving toward the door. We will, Draven confirmed, calling for Owen and his guard captains simultaneously. Gather every available force, we ride within the hour. The journey toward Mia's home territory felt endless, every mile stretching her nerves tighter with worry for her people, for Alpha Callum, for the only home she had ever truly known. Draven rode beside her the entire way, his expression carrying grim determination, occasionally glancing toward her with quiet reassurance despite the danger awaiting them ahead. They arrived as dawn broke over the horizon, revealing a scene of chaos along the territory's outer boundaries. Fires had been set to several outbuildings, and exhausted defenders struggled desperately to hold their ground against a force clearly larger and better equipped than anything Mia's small pack could muster on their own. Draven wasted no time issuing commands, his allied forces moving swiftly into formation, reinforcing weakened positions and pushing back against the attacking force with practiced precision. Mia, refusing to remain passively on the sidelines, found herself working alongside healers tending to the wounded, her steady hands and calm presence providing comfort amid the surrounding chaos. As the battle continued, Mia noticed patterns in the attacking force's movements, patterns that reminded her of tactics discussed during council meetings she had attended alongside Draven. She hurried toward one of the guard captains coordinating the defense. They are pushing hardest toward the eastern supply routes, she said urgently. If they capture those roads, they will cut off any reinforcements arriving from allied territories. The captain studied her words carefully before nodding, quickly redirecting a portion of their forces to reinforce the eastern boundary. The adjustment proved crucial, successfully repelling a concentrated push that had threatened to overwhelm their defenses entirely. Draven found her shortly afterward, relief and admiration mixing clearly across his exhausted features. Your instincts were correct, he said. That adjustment likely prevented a significant breach in our defenses. I have spent weeks listening to strategic discussions during council meetings, Mia replied. I suppose some of it finally proved useful. Despite the danger surrounding them, a faint smile touched Draven's lips at her words, though it faded quickly as reports continued arriving, regarding the ongoing conflict along the boundaries. The attacking force, though significant, began showing signs of retreat, as Draven's reinforcements continued arriving throughout the morning, Allied Alphas honoring the commitments made during the recent summit, by sending additional support to defend Mia's vulnerable territory. By midday, the attacking force had withdrawn entirely, retreating back toward the northern territories from which they had come. Exhausted but relieved defenders began the difficult work of assessing damage and tending to those injured during the confrontation, grateful that the timely arrival of reinforcements had prevented far greater devastation. Alpha Callum, weary but alive, met with Draven and Mia once the immediate danger had passed, gratitude evident in his tired expression. I feared we would not survive until reinforcements arrived, he admitted. Your timely response saved countless lives within this territory. This attack was never truly about your territory alone, Draven said grimly. It was retaliation, aimed directly at weakening my position and punishing Mia for the truth revealed during the recent summit. Alpha Callum's expression darkened with understanding. Corian, he said quietly. Undoubtedly, Draven confirmed, though proving direct responsibility will require careful investigation, given his previous efforts to conceal involvement in similar incidents. As the territory began the slow process of recovery, Mia found herself walking through the damaged sections of her childhood home, grief and anger mixing painfully within her chest, at the destruction Corian's ambition had caused. Yet amid the wreckage, she also felt a fierce determination building steadily, a resolve to ensure that whatever Corian intended through this attack would ultimately fail to achieve his desired outcome. That evening, as reports continued arriving regarding the identity and origin of the attacking force, Owen approached Draven and Mia with crucial information. We have captured several individuals during the retreat, he said. Preliminary questioning suggests direct orders originated from within Corian's own territory, confirming your suspicions. Will they testify publicly? Draven asked. With appropriate incentive, likely yes, Owen replied. Their loyalty to Corian appears considerably weaker than his own confidence suggested. Draven's expression hardened with renewed determination. Then we will expose this attack exactly as we exposed his father's deception, he said. Corian has made a grave miscalculation believing violence would succeed where manipulation failed. Mia felt a mixture of relief and lingering unease at the news. Justice finally seemed within reach, though the cost of reaching it had been measured in damaged homes and frightened people who deserved none of the conflict thrust upon them. "This will not end quietly," she said softly, watching smoke still rising faintly from damaged structures in the distance. "Corian has shown he is willing to cause real harm to achieve his ambitions, which is precisely why he must be stopped decisively," Draven replied. "Not through further violence, but through undeniable truth and unified opposition from every territory he has wronged or threatened." Over the following days, word of the attack spread rapidly throughout the region, carried by messengers to every allied territory that had pledged support during the recent summit. Rather than weakening Draven's position as Corian had intended, the unprovoked assault against a vulnerable, smaller pack only strengthened unified opposition against him, as Alpha after Alpha condemned such blatant aggression against innocent people. Mia worked tirelessly alongside her people, helping rebuild damaged structures and comfort frightened villagers, while Draven coordinated with allied territories to formally address Corian's escalating aggression through proper channels rather than further conflict. Though exhaustion weighed heavily upon everyone involved, a renewed sense of unity and purpose began emerging from the wreckage of the attack, a determination to ensure that Corian's ambition would ultimately fail against the combined strength of those he had wronged. As days turned into a week, preparations began for a final confrontation, not through further violence, but through a formal gathering, where Corian would finally be forced to answer for both his father's historical deception and his own recent aggression against innocent territories. Mia understood that whatever awaited during this final confrontation would determine not only her own future, but the future stability of the entire region. Whatever storm Corian had unleashed through his desperate retaliation, Mia felt steadier than ever, standing firmly beside Draven and the growing unity of territories determined to see justice finally served. 2 weeks after the attack on Mia's home territory, a final gathering was called, larger even than the previous summits, drawing nearly every Alpha ruler from across the region to witness what many were already calling a turning point in the long-standing traditions governing pack leadership. Corian arrived under formal request rather than choice, understanding that refusing to attend would only confirm his guilt before every observing leader. The Great Hall felt different this time as Mia entered alongside Draven, no longer the nervous, uncertain Omega who had stumbled into the wrong seat weeks earlier. She walked with quiet confidence, aware that whatever unfolded during this gathering would shape not only her own future, but the future of countless smaller packs who had long suffered under the same corrupt ambitions that had destroyed her mother's happiness decades earlier. Draven opened the proceedings directly, addressing the assembled Alphas without hesitation. 2 weeks ago, an unprovoked attack was launched against a small, vulnerable territory, he began. An attack intended purely as retaliation against revelations made during our previous gathering. Corian rose immediately, his expression carefully composed despite the visible tension surrounding him. "I had no involvement in any attack," he said firmly. "Whatever accusations you intend to level against me require substantial proof, not merely convenient timing." "We have proof," Draven replied calmly, gesturing for Owen to bring forward several individuals who had been captured during the attack's retreat. The prisoners, though clearly nervous, confirmed under careful questioning that orders for the assault had originated directly from Corian's own territory, detailing specific instructions given regarding the timing and targets of their assault. Murmurs spread through the hall as testimony continued, painting an increasingly damning picture of Corian's direct involvement in the attack. Several allied Alphas exchanged troubled glances, clearly reconsidering any remaining support they had previously offered him. This testimony proves nothing beyond desperate men seeking leniency through false accusation, Corian argued, though his voice carried less conviction than before. "Perhaps," Draven acknowledged, "though combined with the previous revelations regarding your father's manufactured deception against an innocent woman, and your own recent attempts to manipulate loyal advisors against Mia Calloway, a clear pattern emerges. A pattern of using manipulation and violence to protect ambitions that were never rightfully yours to claim." The hall fell into heavy silence as Draven's words settled over the gathered leaders. An older Alpha, one who had questioned Draven's controversial declaration regarding Mia during the previous summit, rose slowly from his seat. "Alpha King," he said, his tone carrying newfound respect rather than skepticism, "the evidence presented today, combined with previous revelations, leaves little doubt regarding Alpha Corian's actions. I withdraw any previous concerns regarding your judgment in this matter." Similar sentiments echoed throughout the hall as one Alpha after another voiced support for Draven's leadership and formal condemnation of Corian's actions. Recognizing the overwhelming shift in support against him, Corian's composure finally crumbled entirely. "Everything I have done," he said, his voice tight with barely controlled emotion, has been to protect what my family built, what my father built, regardless of the methods required. Your father built nothing beyond lies and stolen influence, Draven replied firmly, and you have continued his legacy through manipulation and violence rather than genuine leadership. This council finds you unfit to continue ruling your territory unchecked. Formal proceedings continued throughout the remainder of the day, resulting in Corian's territory being placed under careful oversight from allied alphas, ensuring the smaller packs within his region would receive fair treatment and protection moving forward, regardless of his personal ambitions. Corian himself was stripped of unrestricted authority, forced to answer directly to a council of neighboring alphas for any future decisions regarding his territory's governance. As the gathering concluded and alphas began departing back toward their respective territories, Draven turned to Mia, his expression carrying quiet relief mixed with deep affection. "It is finally over," he said softly. "Not entirely," Mia replied, though hope had replaced much of the anxiety she had carried throughout recent weeks. "But the truth has finally been acknowledged, and justice, however delayed, has finally been served." In the weeks following the gathering, life within the fortress began settling into a new rhythm, one built upon the foundation of truth and unity rather than hidden secrets and manipulated tradition. Draven formally announced sweeping changes to long-standing customs that had previously restricted leadership opportunities based purely on rank or lineage, opening pathways for capable individuals from smaller, less influential packs to rise based on genuine merit and character rather than birthright alone. Mia found herself increasingly involved in these reforms, offering perspective and understanding regarding the struggles faced by smaller territories that had long been overlooked or dismissed by more powerful rulers. Her insight, shaped by her own humble beginnings, proved invaluable as Draven worked to build a more equitable system of governance across the region. On a clear autumn afternoon, months after the chaos of recent events had finally settled, Draven called together every allied alpha once more, this time for a celebration rather than a crisis. Standing before the same great hall where Mia had once mistakenly claimed his seat, Draven formally presented her not merely as his intended mate, but as Luna in her own right, an equal partner in leadership rather than simply a symbolic figure standing beside him. "Many of you witnessed the beginning of this journey," Draven said, addressing the assembled leaders with quiet pride. "A simple mistake that revealed truths long buried, corrected injustices long ignored, and ultimately led to changes that will benefit generations of smaller packs long overlooked by outdated tradition." He turned to Mia, taking her hand gently within his own. "Mia Calloway has proven, time and again, that strength and wisdom are not determined by rank or birth, but by character and courage. I present her today, not simply as my chosen mate, but as your rightful Luna, equal in authority, and respected in her own merit." The hall erupted into genuine applause, a stark contrast to the shocked, uncertain silence that had greeted her presence during that very first summit weeks earlier. Mia felt tears building in her eyes as she looked out across the gathered leaders, remembering vividly the fear and confusion of her earliest days within these very walls. "The seat I once claimed by mistake," she said, addressing the hall directly for the first time, her voice steady, despite the weight of the moment, "has become something I never expected. A place earned through truth, courage, and the unwavering support of someone willing to challenge tradition itself for the sake of justice." She glanced toward Draven, warmth and gratitude filling her expression. "I did not seek this position. I did not seek power or influence. I sought only the truth about my own family's history. Yet somehow, along that journey, I found purpose far greater than I ever imagined possible." As the celebration continued late into the evening, filled with genuine warmth and hopeful optimism for the future, Mia found a quiet moment to step outside into the fortress gardens, the same gardens where she and Draven had shared countless private conversations throughout their journey together. She breathed in the crisp autumn air, reflecting on everything that had unfolded since that fateful moment when she had mistakenly claimed a seat meant for someone else entirely. Draven joined her quietly, wrapping a comforting arm around her shoulders as they gazed out over the peaceful fortress grounds. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. Mia smiled, leaning gently against him. "Only that I did not stumble into your hall sooner," she replied. Draven chuckled softly, pressing a gentle kiss against her forehead. "Fate rarely follows convenient timing," he said, "but I believe it delivers exactly what is needed, precisely when it matters most." Together, they stood in comfortable silence, watching the last light of day fade gently into evening, secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges still awaited them in the future, they would face them together. Equal partners bound not by mistake or tradition, but by genuine respect, shared purpose, and a love neither of them had ever expected to find within the walls of a fortress built on old secrets and even older wounds. The wrong seat she had once taken by mistake had become, in the end, exactly where she was always meant to belong.